Hello, beautiful, blessed people. So this is the second half of my testimony, and really very, very specific details, because if I shared everything, it would take me hours to share everything. There's like every scenario is like a story in itself. So basically, when my relationship with the children's father, the last two children's father, had ended, we both had a Black Planet account. I actually got a Black Planet account when we were together because he was consistently on it. And as far as I could tell, Black Planet was a networking site, like for people who are interested in linking up or dating or whatever. So I wanted to, but it could be also for networking, for promoting your business, that kind of thing. But predominantly it was for dating. So when we broke up, I continued to use the network because I don't know why. I should have probably just deleted it, but because I had developed some friendships with some people on Black Planet, I continued. And when I was in my relationship, I was announcing that I was in a relationship, and I wasn't in a relationship. I was saying that I was not in a relationship. So people started to ask me to go on dates, and a couple times. Twice actually. Once I obliged and went on a date with a guy who was younger than me, but when I met with him, I was under the understanding that I could tell that he was quite a bit younger than me, based on like what the job he did and the car he drove, what he did to his car, that kind of thing. Anyway, the point is that my ex had told me that it was going to be a challenge for me to find anyone as good as him, which I found very difficult. But at the same time, I felt that maybe there was some truth to it, because I had made poor choices in the past, and I have a physical reminder of that with my children. Like you could see, like, I had a pretty, traumatic past. So subconsciously, I kind of maybe believed it. So I made choices that reflected that I felt that way about my situation. So maybe, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks after the relationship was over, for those 2 weeks, I had to run from my car to the house, to the car, from my car to my work, with the children or without the children, because my ex had been like stalking the house, like monitoring what we were doing. He was like outside. And at some point, I'm not too sure when that stopped, but I just gave it 2 weeks for it to kind of settle. And then he made it very clear that he wanted to see the children, and that he kind of moved on with his life, which I was praying that was true. So I invited him to the house, and yeah, he spent more time trying to actually get to me than the children, but that's not anything different than it had been. And I try to make it more about the children than me, because I really wanted to move on with my life. I actually really didn't know how to end the relationship before. I had been doing a cake business where I was making cakes when we were together as well, because I wanted to somehow find a way to supplement our income. Because as much as I wasn't really a materialistic person, he very much was much about how things looked, how his car looked, how he looked. So a lot of the money that could have been spent on just basically surviving, putting into the mortgage, putting into the children, went into entertaining, getting the latest iPhone or getting an Xbox when it first came out, like those kind of superficial things. And I, as a silly woman, entertained it. So I continued with the cake classes. And it was discovered when I went to the classes that I actually had a gift to be able to make cakes. I went to the classes to be able to learn how to stack wedding cakes, that kind of thing, like technical things that I would not have known just off the bat. Like, there's no point in reinventing the wheel. But when I went to the class, I found out through my teacher that I actually was very good at doing what I did, and I probably needed a more advanced kind of class. I was able to make cakes that look like things, like a McQueen car cake. I made two of those. I made a Pokemon cake, a Hannah Montana cake, Disney princess cakes for people, and I made a DJ cakes that look like DJ turntables and a lot of different things. So I used to post my cakes on Facebook, and people used to applaud, say that they were done well. As all this was happening, I was losing a lot of weight. I hadn't lost my appetite, and I wasn't eating, but I didn't feel unwell, and I didn't even realize I was fasting when this was going on. I had lost a lot of weight. My neighbors were very concerned about how much weight I had lost in such a short time, and so my cousin was having a birthday, and she invited me to come. So I went to this birthday. It ended up being a whole bunch of people that I had worked with when I was doing the security job. A lot of the security people were there. A lot of the DJs were there. They were friends of hers. And so I had a great time when I went. My ex wasn't there. I'm not too sure exactly. It was kind of more the luck of the draw that I ended up being I went, and he wasn't there. So I had a great time. And the DJ who was there was saying he was having a birthday the next week and that he really wanted me to come. So I said not only would I come, I'd make a cake for him. So he told me what flavor he'd like, and I designed it. He basically wanted a astrological sign symbol for his cake. And I went to the party. But before I went to the party, I went to the hairdresser to get I wanted this to be my opening. Like, this is an introduction to my cake business. I wanted it to be something where I didn't have to depend on anyone to supplement my income, that I could actually survive on this cake business and take care of my children on my own, because it was like pulling teeth to get any kind of help for the children. And they were great. They're great kids. So I didn't want them to feel like they were an obligation to anybody, or to anyone to feel like they needed to support them. So I went to get my hair done, and I was told that my hair was thinning in the top. And I had been weaving it the whole time I was with my ex. I was weaving it, so it was very, very long, but it was thin. There was no point in having it long if it was thin. So I told her to cut it off. So this is when I started to sport a very short hairstyle, and that before everyone else did a big chop, I did a big chop. But as much as it wasn't a real planned big chop, I just, it was kind of planned, because I decided that I was going to start from scratch. So I cut my hair really short, and then went to this party. When I went to this party, it was like a big deal. Like no person of my complexion would ever cut their hair. It was like almost like when I was at the salon, it was like a shock to everybody that I cut my hair. Anyway, I had a lot of compliments. And because it was my first time being out in years, I had not gone out anywhere except to work in years. And I remember, I'm supposed to be a Christian. I was still believing in God. I still had that born again experience. But there's definitely a time where you could, a Christian would be sinning. And the life that I had been living was I was so far removed from what I knew was right, that I had stopped going to church. I had stopped reading the Word. But I thought this was a whole fresh start for me, that I was going to, start to go back to church again, or at least pray and seek the Lord in the Word and do my cake business. Anyway, it didn't end up being that way. I ended up being invited to a lot of events with DJs to promote my cakes, but no one really wanted to pay me. They wanted just me to be there because of what I did was extraordinary. Like, my work was pretty good, but no one wanted to pay how much the labor it took to put into doing the cakes. And people wanted just cakes for free. Basically, the DJ business is like a real cutthroat. Everyone's like a crabs in a bucket kind of scenario. Everyone's looking out for themselves and their own in that sort of scenario, and I didn't know that. So anyway, I continued to get these proposals from guys, like indecent proposals. Like, guys were always asking me, "Why are you single? Why aren't you with somebody? You're so pretty. You're so this," and I didn't really go into detail. I didn't think I needed to. I just wanted to do my cakes and get out of there. But the more that I went out, the less cakes I did, and the more I was just invited just for the sake of saying that Deborah's in the house. It became such a stupid thing. And then I started to get really involved. At first, when I started going out, I didn't dance. But as time went on, people would engage me and ask me wanted to dance, and the music was enticing. And it just became like I didn't even know. I recognized myself. I think about it, I didn't even recognize myself. I don't think ever in my life was I ever that much into partying. Anyway, my whole focus was wrong. I stopped praying. I stopped seeking the word. As much as I was doing this for my children, I hardly ever saw them because I was either doing a cake and having them help me to do a cake, and running out the door at night, getting ready, going to the gym to stay in shape, and fighting off guys. Basically is how it was. So anyway, one day I decided, this is like, I can't continue to fight these guys off. I really don't have a reason why I'm not dating them, because I couldn't just say I was a Christian, because like, what was I doing at clubs? And I didn't have a boyfriend, so I couldn't lie and say I had a boyfriend. So I decided that at some point I would pick somebody. So one day, my friend, the DJ that I did the cake for the first time, had a party, and I did his cake again. But this time I upped the ante. I did a turntable, like those DJ to CD turntables with the two turntables, the key, everything. I wish I still have a picture of it. But people were invited to this party. Some of them that I knew, I hadn't seen in years, and some people I didn't know. And again, I had guys coming at me, coming at me. This one particular guy, one of the girls I knew I hadn't seen in years, said that, "Isn't that guy cute?" And I thought he was attractive, but he was definitely not my type. I wouldn't have, turned twice, because he's not my type. Very muscular, athletic looking, handsome, but just not my type. But anyway, we started talking, and I realized why he wasn't my type, because the way that he looked seemed as though he wouldn't be the type of person that would be able to hold a lengthy conversation at any depth with me. And sure enough, it was kind of like that. A lot of the talk that we talked about was about his trips he took to Jamaica, the things he had, the things he owned. It seemed to be consistently the kind of person or guys that I would attract. Anyway, we exchanged numbers, and we ended up going out for lunch. He invited me down to where he worked, which was on the clear across the other side of the GTA, for lunch. And we ended up talking again about superficial things. Who's dating who do you know this, what are you attracted to, that kind of stuff. Very superficial. Anyway, he had a job working as a manager at Canada Post. So I knew that he wasn't looking for anything from me financially, which is new. As much as I wasn't making a whole lot of money, I always seemed to attract guys who needed my help. So with children, you don't want that. And even though I have my four children, I just knew I was not going to settle. Either I was going to be single, or I was not going to settle for someone who was going to monopolize my time again, or try and stop me from seeing my potential, my full potential. Anyway. Long story short, it was he and his friend that that we talked at this party, and his friend and I became like friends. Like, I thought, like, he used to call me sis, and he used to tell me, I guess, I don't know, they're fabricated stories, but he used to tell me stories about things that were happening to me, girls he liked, I gave him advice, that kind of stuff. And the other friend, the guy that I was talking to, ended up being more of a romantic relationship. When I say romantic, I just mean that it wasn't just a friendship. We had been intimate. Anyway, the whole reason why I allowed it to get to this place is because I really didn't see value in myself. I think subconsciously I believed that this is what I deserved. I created my own scriptures. Basically, I knew it was wrong what I was doing, but I felt because I was so far gone and that my life had been such a mess, that what I deserved was what I accepted, what I allowed. I knew that I could get a guy. That's not hard. It's not hard for a lot of girls to get men. I was pretty in shape for someone my age. I was not a stupid person. I don't think I'm an ugly person. And I was getting all these proposals. But I knew that I had children to go home to, and that I didn't want to keep bringing men into their lives. I had already had my children. I had been playing house, and I didn't want to play house anymore. I wanted to be married if I was going to be married. If I'm not going to be married, then I'm not going to bring guys around my children anymore. So I ended up seeing this guy. For a while. But there's a part of the story I should share. I should backtrack, and I'm hoping this doesn't confuse you all. When I was on Black Planet someone had messaged me and asked me if I wanted to go and meet for lunch or for drinks or coffee or something like that. We had arranged. We made it a point to that I thought it was a good place to go. People always say go in a public place, so I decided that a coffee shop would be great. One of those public, Starbucks or Second Cup or something like that. So we met. This guy's profile picture was a very attractive gentleman. It doesn't say much about him. I guess it did, but I can't remember what. It was more like a very flourishy, not fabricated. I don't want to say fabricated, but now that I know the situation, I must have been fabricated. A big elaborate story about himself, very articulately written. So we went on this coffee date, and the guy that showed up was not the guy in the picture, for sure. And I looked at him like, dude, you're totally not the guy in the picture. I didn't say it, but then he said, what did he say? He said he gained weight. It wasn't him. This guy was totally not even attractive. But I felt sorry for him, and I engaged him in this conversation. And I engaged him in this conversation. We talked for about an hour and a half, and then we parted our ways. And then he messaged me on Black Planet saying how attractive he thought I was, and there was a very sexual undertone to what he was saying. Anyway, at some point he invited me to go to his house to just come, I guess, to visit. And me, my naive self, I assume that when people are grown, that they don't do stupidness. Like, that he's invited me to his house, that he has a house. He had talked about being a manager. I think it was a Walmart that he had managed. And so I said, he's a professional, I'm a professional. This is okay, so we could be friends. Because there's no way I would date a guy who would lie about his profile. Like, my profile was me, right? So the day that I was supposed to go, I think it was around Christmas, the day I was supposed to go visit him, but it was frigid outside and my van wouldn't start. And I used to think stuff like, this is God's way of protecting me, not allowing me to go. But this time, as I'm starting to understand the van, I went to go tell him, I said, I'm not going to make it. I can't get out there. The van's not going to work. And the way that he described where he lived, it was quite a distance to drive. And I didn't want to get stuck out there with no one to help me. So he said, you're lying, and you're not being truthful. If you wanted to see me, you'd see me. Like it sounded like he felt his self-esteem was low, and that he felt, that I felt bad, right? So I went outside to try and start the van again, and sure enough, eventually the van started. And I just see that as God's way of saying, he doesn't force us in situations, and sometimes if we want something, he'll allow it, even though he doesn't want us to do certain things. So he allowed it, and I was able to drive out there. It took me about an hour to get out there. When I got out there, the house was about, I don't know, I see about 300 square feet. It was huge. The land around it was about just as big as a house, maybe 3 times the size. When I got to the door, a different person than the one that I had saw initially answered the door. And he said, I thought I asked you to park the car in the across from the driveway. And I'm like, who? In my mind, I was like, who are you? Anyway, I went inside, and I expected that this gentleman that I answered the door was Down syndrome. You could tell he was a little off. And so I was waiting for him to get the guy that I had coffee with. But this guy didn't come. Basically, the guy that answered the door was acting like he was the guy from the coffee shop. So then I froze. I thought to myself, I'm like an hour away from home. I don't know where I really am. It took me forever to get out here because it was freezing and it was windy. And I'm a female by myself. And the only one who really knew where I was my eldest daughter. I told her that I had been going somewhere, and she knew the profile. So if anything had happened to me, they could check the profile, I guess, and trace who this person was. But anyway, whatever this person said to do, I did, if you get my drift. He had but he instructed me to do certain things. I followed through. There must have been other people in the house because the house was huge. It could have been anywhere, but I didn't see anybody else, and I was terrified. I just thought, if I didn't oblige with this, first of all, I thought to myself, why would someone do this? Why would someone go out of their way to, change people? That means there must have been more than one person involved in this. Anyway, I got my coat, forgot my shoes in my hand. I don't even know. Did I put my shoes on? I don't even know if I did. I think I kind of walked out the door without my shoes because it was snowy and I wanted to run to my van as fast as I could, and I couldn't walk in the shoes I had on very well. They weren't winter boots, and I got in the van and I cried. I just could not believe what had happened. I could not believe what had happened. Partway through my drive back, I got a text message from this person. I don't even know who was text. Not at this point, I didn't know who was text messaging me, and he said, "You were great." Blah 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 blah, and I'm like, "What is going on? Like, who is doing this?" And I didn't go to the police because I didn't. First of all, I didn't even know how to explain this. This is totally outrageous, and I thought if they didn't catch this person, then it was just, I can't remember what my reasoning was, but I thought I was going to try and figure out more about the situation first before I brought it to the police. So I continued to engage this person in text messaging back and forth. Eventually, we met up again, and it was the same last person. I don't know who dropped this person off at the restaurant, but I sat down and I was trying to see how articulate he was, how much he could speak. I knew he didn't drive there, and he was quite high functioning, very high functioning, but I just thought, like, who is doing this? I couldn't figure out. But anyway, the point is, I couldn't get to the source of who was doing it and what was going on. So I just said, forget it. I'm just going to just delete the profile and move on with my life. So now we're going into the birthday party. Went to the birthday party and met this guy, blah blah blah. So I ended up saying, like, when my ex said to me that he's the best thing that I was ever gonna have, then that's the real thing. I said to myself, there's crazy people out here. I said, this is not a safe situation for a woman who's single at all. Plus, I was like, now that I know the spiritual realm, I was a very young Christian. I had no idea about the spiritual realm. I didn't know anything about witchcraft, and I didn't know anything about what people were really doing. At some point, I called the police, and I told them what happened, and they didn't even pursue it. It's almost like they knew that this was going on. I said, there's a guy that I met. I described the situation because he continued to message me on, I think a week after we had been on Black Planet together, we exchanged profiles on Facebook, and we had a lot of the similar friends, so that I knew this is a big thing. So I called the police, and I told them the police what happened, and they didn't even bother. I said, you've probably forgotten where the person was. I said, no, I remember distinctly where this person lives. I've never been out there before, so it was like I knew how to get there. It was a long drive, but I knew how to get there. I'm a very visual person, and the police didn't pursue it. So I knew at that point that this was big. I just couldn't understand why they would allow something like this to happen and not press charges. I just couldn't understand it. Anyway, now we're back to the party. Went to the party, met these guys. One would end up being my friend, the other one ended up being someone I was intimate with. And I thought to myself, you know what? I have to just, I was going to these parties and kept on getting these proposals from men. And I said, I just have to decide on somebody. I don't know why I felt I needed to do that. I guess I should have just stopped doing the cakes and just, I just felt in my flesh, I had to take care of my kids. Someone had to do it. I didn't feel I had anyone that could help me. And so I continued to kind of I started to feel numb. Like I was just going through the motions. Like I didn't feel any attachment to anybody at that point. Only my kids. I felt as though I loved them, but I felt as though my whole existence was about taking care of them, making sure they were taken care of. I felt I had no one to advocate for me and for them. The friend, the one who used to call me Six, the one I felt like was a brother to me, I really loved that relationship because I felt like I was like a really true sister to him. Like my brother and I, my only brother that I have, and I never had a good relationship. So I felt great about the fact that he saw me as a sister. So one day he told me that his father passed away. I was in shock. His father passed away. He was an old man. And he said that he was behind in his mortgage and that just things started to fall apart for him. So when I did my income tax to his friend that I was talking to, his father did income tax. So I did my income tax to him, and he knew how much money I got back. And because I had my children, this is usually how I supplement my summer. So in the school year, I worked for the school, and in the summer, I used my income tax to take care of so that I could be home with my children. because I wanted to be the one who predominantly had, an influence in their lives. So he asked me to borrow a certain amount of money and that he'd give it back to me when the insurance company came in, because I think what he died from was an accident. So I forwarded him the money, which was a significant amount, a good chunk of the money that I would have been using to live off of, but he promised that he'd give the money back. And I thought, because I was talking to his friend and had been intimate, that he would definitely not, go against his word. Long story short, once I forwarded him the money, he started to disappear. He wasn't around as much. I didn't hear from him. And his friend was like worthless. There was nothing to that relationship but just being intimate. Like, I couldn't discuss the situation with him. There was no meat to our relationship, quote unquote. And so I felt I just dug myself into this deep hole. My mortgage became behind. The children's the support I was getting for the children that I actually was getting somehow stopped. Like, they were government or court ordered, and they just, every source of income that I had just depleted. The only source of income that I had left was my job at at the school. A lot of things came to the forefront for me. I ended up stopped talking to the guy that I was intimate with, because I realized our relationship was not going to ensure that I got the money back from the guy who borrowed the money from me. And then I wrote this lengthy letter on Facebook to him saying that he was a predator, and that I feel like he sought me out. And even though I had children, he still, what man does that? Anyway, once I sent that letter to him, my whole world collapsed. I found out that not only was the guy that I was seeing was a setup, but the scenario that happened to me with the guy who was autistic, the house that I had to drive out, the profile that were changed, that scenario was people that I knew through social media. Someone in my life had been monitoring my social media interactions for years, it must have been. So as soon as my ex and I broke up, that's why the tone kind of changed when my ex and I broke up, because people in my life knew that my ex and I were not together. So I guess they saw the opportunity to kind of, I don't know, someone in my life did not want well for me. Anyway, my whole life fell apart. But I was later to discover that I could just fast forward. I was later to discover that I had a gift to be able to foresee things, that I actually be able to predict things and figure things out quite well. I ended up finding out through Facebook who might have been involved. I found out that a lot of my family members were involved in this. My sister and I didn't have a good relationship. There was a hate that she had for me that I didn't understand where it came from and what it stemmed from. I still to this day don't know. As a matter of fact, when I was deep into my what they call my wilderness time, where I was discovering my gift, and my Heavenly Father was working out the foundation in me, that my childhood was horrific, but that He couldn't do things through me if I was still addicted to things that I used as a pacifier to deal with the pain I experienced as a child. So when I was going through that process, my aunt said to me, you should ask your sister for forgiveness for whatever you did to her. And I'm thinking to myself, what did I do? What did I do to her? I don't know. I couldn't understand it. But there was definitely a significant hate that she had for me. But it wasn't just her. There was a lot of girlfriends I had that underneath had a disdain for me. So let's fast forward. I learned that I have a gift to be able to see things that are to come. And I actually had an audible experience with our Lord and Heavenly Father. I was able to actually hear His voice at one point. And my work started to, somehow my work was involved. I guess through Facebook I could find out anything about anybody, and I found out later on, like now I know that I had been monitored for probably all my life. And the enemy was out to destroy me. So with that being said, our Heavenly Father uses all things, even if it's witchcraft, for our good. I found out, as I shared another story, that my family had been in witchcraft. It is in my family line. I know family members who are distinctly in it. And I understand now why they might have chosen that life. There's a lot of celebrities who do it. It's for the money. People don't want to be poor. People don't want to struggle. But what I've discovered is that we are in a spiritual battle, and there's a few of us that have gone through similar situations that I went through. That the addictions that I have are, even as a believer, you can be addicted and you can still go to hell. That our Heavenly Father can't use us if we are addicted to substances, alcohol, drugs, food, lust, sex, whatever it is. And a lot of this, what's being taught in the schools, are not dealing with the core issues that people have. And really, the only one that can work that out is our Heavenly Father. Our Heavenly Father is the reason why I'm a changed person. There was no pastor. As a matter of fact, when things fell apart and I turned back to God, I couldn't hear His voice anymore. I was so afraid that He had left me and was never going to come back. I cried, and I said, Heavenly Father, please don't leave me, I'm so sorry. And I felt really like, I had felt like I had no value. Anyway, I'll tell you another situation related to this. When things started to fall apart and the mortgage was totally behind, a friend of mine she's not a friend, she was real trying to hurt me. She had linked me with this guy who could try to help me with my mortgage. And she said it was a legitimate, okay thing. But it wasn't. It just made the situation worse. So one day when I was with my children, I got on my knees and I prayed and I asked God to forgive me, and I asked Him to protect my children. And I said they need a home. You're all I have. About 20 minutes later, I went downstairs to my children's room to tuck them into bed. It wasn't raining or overcast, and lightning struck the house in front of ours, and it caught fire. It was in the news, caught fire. So 8 houses in front of mine, as I sat in the bed and watched through the window, 8 houses caught fire and burnt to the ground right before my eyes. No one was hurt, thankfully. But what I will say is that it was kind of like our Heavenly Father's way of telling me that I will never leave you nor forsake you, that I'm here for you, that I'll protect you. It was dramatic. I called my mom and told her what happened, and she said, I don't remember what she said, but she kind of blew it off, and I thought, no, this is a sign. And from that point on, our Heavenly Father, in spite of whatever I had gone through, He has demonstrated to me that He's with me, that He'll protect me. And sometimes He'll allow me to see what He's done.